The prairie breathed dust as if it remembered every sorrow buried beneath it. Wind scraped across the dry earth, weaving through the sagebrush and whispering over cracked fences. A rust-bitten windmill groaned overhead, spinning slowly in the late afternoon light that poured like honey over the hills. Somewhere far off, a coyote yelped once, sharp, mournful, and then the silence returned, wide as the horizon. Little boots, scuffed, too big, crunched along the path where wild grass once grew. Josie didn't cry. Not when her feet blistered, not when the wind stung her eyes raw, not when the town doors shut as she passed them like a ghost. She had learned early that tears were wasted in Crescent Gulch. She reached the ranch gate near sunset. The iron was old, cold to the touch. The sign hung half-broken from a single nail, Boone. A single horse grazed in the field beyond, and a man stood under the sloping roof of the barn, hands in his pockets, watching the sky change colors. He didn't move when she approached, didn't call out, only watched. She lifted her face to him, dirt smudged, hair tangled, cheeks hollowed by hunger, and whispered, "Please, save my mom." The words fell quiet as dust, but they struck harder than any thunderclap. Eli Boone looked down at the girl and saw not a child, but a shadow of something he once knew, grief stitched into skin too young to wear it. He said nothing, just stepped forward and knelt beside her. His voice came low, rough like gravel. "What happened?" Her lip trembled, but she kept her voice steady. "They said she's a witch again. The McAllister boy died. Fever. Mom tried to help, but he didn't make it." Her voice cracked there. "So they came last night, broke the door down, dragged her out." His jaw flexed. "They put her arms on the old tree stump by the chapel and drove spikes through them." Her breath hitched. "Said it'd drive out her evil. Sheriff didn't stop 'em, just watched." Eli rose slowly. He didn't ask another question. The silence between them was thick with all the unspoken things that people in this land buried: guilt, pain, memory. He nodded once, sharp, and walked to his wagon. "Climb in," he said. Josie obeyed. She sat beside him, silent, her legs too short to reach the floor. The wagon creaked as it rolled over the brittle path back toward the heart of town, where cruelty always found its way into the hands of the righteous. The townsfolk watched them pass from porches and windows, the way they might watch wolves slink past their doors. Whispers bloomed like weeds in their wake. Boone hadn't been seen in months. Some thought him mad, others dangerous. The truth was simpler. He kept his distance to keep from breaking again. As they rode, Josie kept glancing up at him. He said nothing. No comfort. No false promises. Just a stillness in him that somehow made her feel safer than she had in days. The church steeple peeked out from the edge of the ridge, leaning like it had grown tired of standing for men who no longer remembered mercy. Boone turned the wagon down a narrow trail veiled by dry pine and pale dust. The cabin sat crooked against a cluster of dead trees. One shutter hung loose. Ashes marked the earth near the front steps. Boone's boots hit the ground before the wagon stopped. Josie jumped down after him and ran to the doorway, calling, "Mama." No reply. Boone stepped through the doorway and into dimness thick with the smell of sage, sweat, and blood. Ruth lay slumped against a wall, tied to a support beam. Her arms were raw, cloth wrapped hastily around deep punctures still weeping through the linen. Her breathing was shallow. Her eyes, half-lidded, flicked open when the door creaked. She tried to lift her head but winced. Boone untied her without a word. His hands, calloused and precise, worked the knots carefully. When the last rope dropped, she sagged forward, and he caught her. Their eyes met briefly. She blinked, as if not sure he was real. "You're not dying here," he said. He carried her inside, stepping over a broken chair and a scattered basket of herbs. Josie cleared a spot on the cot and fluffed a pillow with shaking hands. Boone laid Ruth down, and her body went limp with exhaustion. Her breathing rattled, but steadied. "You're late," she rasped, half a smile curling through pain. Boone didn't smile back. "You're lucky she found me first." Ruth's gaze softened as she looked toward her daughter. "She always finds a way." Boone crossed to the basin, poured water, and soaked a cloth. As he pressed it gently to Ruth's brow, his movements were deliberate, almost reverent. The silence stretched again, not awkward but dense, like the air before a summer storm. Outside, the wind shifted. The sound of a creaking sign somewhere in town echoed faintly. Josie sat by her mother's side and began mixing crushed herbs into a salve with practiced hands. Boone watched her. She learned that from you. Ruth nodded faintly. She's all I've got left. Boone's eyes lingered on the girl, then on Ruth. Something flickered across his face. Regret, maybe. Or recognition. They'll come back, he said finally. Ruth nodded, lips pressed tight. They always do. Boone stood, went to the door, and looked out at the sinking sun. His silhouette filled the doorway, tall and silent like a carved monument. I'll be here when they do. Josie looked up from her herbs, hope blooming in her wide, tired eyes. Ruth tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Her fingers found Boone's wrist for the briefest moment, a gesture heavy with things she wasn't ready to say. He didn't flinch. Outside, the prairie darkened, the last light slipping beneath the horizon. But inside that small, broken home, something unspoken had begun to settle. Not safety, not yet, but something quieter. A tether, a promise, a man haunted by loss, a woman branded by lies, and a girl who walked through dust and shame to carry hope on blistered feet. And as the wind howled beyond the walls, Eli Boone closed the door softly behind him. Night settled like a veil, thick and velvet, pressing against the walls of the crooked cabin. The lantern flickered low, casting shadows that danced across the dirt floor and the weary faces within. Outside, the wind whispered of things the town would never say aloud: regret, cowardice, and all the silences that bred cruelty. Eli sat on a stool near the cot, arms resting on his knees, eyes steady on Ruth's sleeping form. Her breaths came thin but rhythmic now, pain tucked beneath a fragile layer of rest. The salve Josie had rubbed into her mother's arms clung to the bandages, herbal scent mingling with blood and sweat and earth. Josie lay curled in the corner, a blanket drawn up to her chin. Her small hand clutched a leather pouch filled with crushed sage and dried chamomile. Even in sleep, she held on to what she thought could protect them. Ruth stirred. Eli leaned closer, wetting the cloth again and dabbing it gently against her cheek. She opened her eyes slowly, glassy with fever but aware. Still hey. Her voice was dust. He nodded. I don't run easy. Her lips cracked into a faint smile, then flinched. Why? Eli didn't answer right away. He looked toward the dark window. The world outside had grown colder in recent years, since the loss of his brothers to a mine collapse, since his fiancée left after months of waiting for a man who no longer believed in rescue. I didn't come for you, he said softly. I came because she asked. A pause. Then, but I stayed because no one came for mine, either. Ruth's eyes softened, tears forming but refusing to fall. Her voice broke apart. I didn't think anyone would, again. He looked at her then, not with pity, not with guilt, but with recognition. The kind that only comes from people who've lived through the same fire and carry its ash in their breath. I'll carry it, he said. If you'll let me. The weight, the shame, the pain, all of it. She didn't respond with words, just reached a trembling hand out, fingers brushing against his forearm. Her touch was featherlight, but it settled something between them. Not love, not yet, but the shape of it, waiting quietly in the corner. Morning came slowly, with a dull sky and air thick as wool. As Ruth slept again, Eli stepped outside to fetch water. A figure stood at the edge of the property, Sheriff Dunley, hat low, rifle slung lazy over his shoulder. Word is, you're housing the witch, the sheriff said, voice slow and coated in disdain. Town ain't gonna like that. Eli stared back, unmoving. Towns never like the truth. The sheriff spat. You think just 'cause you got Boone blood, folks look the other way? No, Eli said. But I reckon they'll think twice if they remember how many graves already bear that name. They locked eyes. The sheriff looked away first. You stir the pot, Eli, it's you they'll burn next time. Then I'll burn with her. By midday, word had spread like prairie fire. Miss Maudie, face powdered, lips thin as a blade, was already on her porch by the time Eli rolled the wagon into town. Ruth sat beside him, her arms wrapped and eyes fixed ahead. Josie rode in back, clutching the herb pouch like a badge of honor. They passed the chapel, where dried blood still marked the old stump. Ruth didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She stared it down like a ghost finally ready to face its killers. The doctor flinched when he saw her, but said nothing as Eli carried her inside. When they returned to the ranch, the sky had gone orange, bruised at the edges. Josie sat on the porch steps while Eli lifted Ruth down from the wagon, holding her like she was something the world had dropped and he meant to mend. He had just crossed the threshold when the sound of hooves broke the stillness. 5 men rode into the clearing, torches in hand, faces twisted by drink and fear. Eli set Ruth down gently and stepped outside. The leader, a man named Tucker, slid from his horse. "We warned you, Boone. You protect her, you fall with her." Eli didn't reach for his gun, didn't bark or threaten. He just stood tall, dust clinging to his shirt, eyes hard as stone. "You touch her," he said, "and I'll make sure every bruise on her body ends up on yours." Tucker scoffed, but his fingers hesitated near the holster. Josie appeared behind Eli, clutching her pouch of herbs like a talisman. "You're scared of a sick woman and a girl," Eli said, his voice quiet, razor-sharp. "You think that makes you a man?" A silence bloomed, awkward and biting. Then, a voice from the shadows, Miss Muddy **, holding a lantern. "You boys already took too much," she said. "What's left of you, if you take more?" Tucker looked at her, at Eli, at the girl. His jaw worked like a rusted gear. Then he spat and turned his horse. One by one, they rode away, fire trailing in their wake like guilt refusing to die. Inside, Ruth sat watching through the window. When Eli entered, she said nothing, just reached for his hand. He took it. Days passed. The bandages came off. Ruth's hands shook when she tried to pour tea, but Eli steadied her wrist gently without a word. Josie laughed more. The cabin no longer smelled of blood, but bread and sage. At dawn, Eli added a fence, thin and crooked, but it wrapped the home like an arm around a shoulder. No declarations were made. No kiss sealed their fate. But some mornings, he poured a second cup of coffee without asking. And some nights, she left the lantern burning longer than she used to, just so he could find his way back from the fields. Once, as they sat by the fire, Ruth whispered, "You don't need to carry my pain anymore." He didn't answer. She smiled. "But I think you want to walk beside it." And he did. Outside, the wind had quieted, but it carried something new across the prairie, not fear or judgment, but the hush of something trying to grow again, in the soil where hurt once lived. And somewhere in that silence, the first spark of hope took root.